Thanks for your time. Before I start, if I could just mention that under the racial vilification policy, Rule 35, the peak rule, I can't give some of the specifics around the incident, but I'm happy to take all questions.
Have you ready, guys? Get on the way.
Tim, why is Tex not standing where you are?
Tex has had a big 2 weeks. It's been since it's been investigated. He's had a long 2 weeks. We had the conciliation yesterday, which came to an outcome, which was good. He's fronted the club today. He spoke to our Indigenous players. He's spoken to our playing group. He's an emotional wreck at the moment, but it's not just about him. There's a number of people that have been affected here. But he made a comment this morning, and he'll be in a position to speak, I think, in the not too distant future.
Can you see how it might not be a great look that he's not here fronting with him?
I understand that point, but like I said, he's had a challenging period and he's fronted the club, he's owned the mistake, he's spoken to both our Indigenous players as well as our broader playing group and our football department, and we expect him to front the media in the not too distant future. But he is also, with the conciliation process, there are only some things that he can say.
What did he say to the players?
He owned the mistake. He owned it first and foremost. He owned this mistake. It was a serious error of judgment for him. He was disappointed in himself. He couldn't believe really that it came out of his mouth, but he needed to own it because it did. He's apologetic and he's just genuinely embarrassed.
How did the Indigenous players take his apology?
They got together as a group, so we did that group earlier this morning. We met them as leaders of the club beforehand to see if they were comfortable to speak to him, which they were. They listened to him, but these things take time. We're a people-first culture here at the club, and we've got to look after all our people, and they're going to take time to get through this. So it's been upsetting for a number of people.
How did you actually find out about the whole thing when it started?
I found out not too long thereafter the Sandford game, and when we found out as a club, there was an internal person that reported it to us. We referred it to the AFL straight away, so it was self-reporting, and we went through the process, the racial vilification investigation process, and yeah, that took over 2 weeks, but we felt like it was the right thing to do, to self-report, and we think it took some real courage from someone internal, and it sort of sets our culture a little bit, that an internal person was able to hold up someone who's been at the club for 14 years with such an illustrious career, to hold him to account for what he said.
Given the culture you're trying to set as CEO, what was your initial reaction to his comment on it?
Look, it's just pure disappointment. There's a little bit of anger. I genuinely couldn't believe that he would say something like that, having got to know Taylor over the last period of time, and I think for him himself, I'm not sure he can reconcile that came out of his mouth. So there's real disappointment because we're trying to set a great culture at this club, and what he said, it just doesn't fit our values. We don't stand for that. So we're very disappointed.
Well, Tim, you said there that Taylor was surprised words came out of his mouth himself. Did he at all apologise before this investigation was undertaken, around the time he made the comments?
Did he apologise?
Yeah, did he say at the time, I shouldn't have said that, sorry guys? Was there anything about that time?
Once we reported to the AFL, it went specifically through the investigation process. So what we were told was that it needed to be an independent process. So as a footy club, we actually stepped aside. So the AFL and the integrity unit took that on. So I can't give the specifics of that, but I can tell you that he is genuinely remorseful.
Would you say Tex Walker has been given more education in this space than the average Australian?
Yes, I've been in the industry for longer than Taylor, and he's been part of Indigenous education programs for a long period of time. So he should have known better. He's a role model for our club and the industry, and he should have known better.
What do you think his Indigenous teammates, his former teammates, and really every First Nations person in this country will think when someone who's been given that level of education says that comment to Tyler or to another First
I probably don't want to speak on their behalf, but if it's anything like I've seen internally and some of the people I've spoken to over the last 2 days, there's a range of emotions which range from anger to disappointment. But what we can take from this, there's something that hasn't happened that has been great for this club, but we can learn from this, and we are saying that we don't stand for racial vilification. This club doesn't, this industry doesn't, and nor should the community. So we can learn from this error of judgment.
You said you can't speak for other people, but you haven't allowed other people within the club to speak on this. Why can't players, particularly some of the Indigenous players, speak on this?
Well, like I said right at the start, it has been a process that we've undertaken, and we've gone through the racial vilification policy. So we were unable to allow our players to make any comment until the conciliation was finished. Now it has. They are free to make some comment, but again, we can't go into the details of the process.
Will Tex be appearing on camera this afternoon in any way through the club's media about this issue?
We will work with him. He's made a public comment today. We'll work with him over the next little while to see if he's available for comment.
Were the players themselves angry and disappointed?
Yes. I think from the leadership to the youngest player, they were disappointed across the board. And we talk about our football leaders, we talk about our administrators. It's, you know, that we don't stand for that.
What's his future at the club going forward?
His future, we haven't even got to speaking about his future. At the moment, we are people first. There's a lot of people that have been affected in different ways. So we're just trying to look after our people, make sure they're supported as well as possible, and get through the next few days.
Can you see how it looks like?
Did they accept that apology?
What he did is he spoke to the broader group, made reference to his apology, his remorse, and I think each individual will now take it up with him individually. It wasn't a group acceptance, it was put his cards on the table, say what he's done, talk about his remorse and how he wants to get better, and then we move forward.
How does the club feel about the sanction in 6 weeks or something?
We think it's appropriate. We endorse the sanctions. We look, it is a large sanction, suspension, as well as financial, but we think it's befitting of the crime and shows that we as a club and the industry don't stand for that.
A couple of years ago, there was a recent ban who was banned for 2 years for racist comments. Is there a disparity there in the two sanctions?
Look, I don't know the detail of that specific event, but we think there's not many markers in the AFL over the last 20 years, but we feel that it is sufficient and enough being 6 weeks when we compare it to what's happened in the past. And you know, we've progressed a lot in the last 20 years, and we think it's befitting of the crime.
Tim, how is it tenable for a player to walk into a playing group of which there are Indigenous players next year when Tex comes back, or even at training for the rest of the season, and it not fracture, there be some level of discomfort between an Indigenous player and a former skipper?
Well, we've just got to work with our group. Like I said, we've got to support our people. We've asked for some independent help. We're not experts in this space. So we've asked for Tanya Hosh from the AFL as well as Paulie Vandenberg to support us, support our Indigenous players as well as our broader playing group so that we can get through the next little period of time, because there's going to be some challenge. We understand that, and now we have to lead as best we can.
So it's tenable for him to play on?
I'd like to think so.
Can you see how it looks like hypocrisy that Texas fronted anti-racism campaigns in the past, or even lip service that he's done that and now comes out and does this?
I totally understand that, but like I said before, as I said, I couldn't believe that something like that would come out of his mouth, and I genuinely feel he can't reconcile that either.
You said that you feel like the sanctions are appropriate. 18 years ago, I think Darren Lehman got a 5-game suspension for something. It's only 1 more game than that. Jaden Stevenson, 10 matches for gambling. In terms of the comparisons there, gambling and racial conduct, do you think that stacks up?
Oh, look, they are in different buckets, and I understand what you're saying, but we've spoken to the AFL, we've spoken to the AFLPA, we've had major stakeholders, Taylor's management group, and we believe the sanction is fair and befitting the crime.
This happened last month. Tex isn't here fronting the cameras. Players have been prevented from talking. And there's real doubts now whether or not Tex will appear in video form or on camera.
Look, far from it. It has been a real challenging last 36, 48 hours because we haven't been able to speak. I myself am fronting the media, Matthew Nix will. We're going to be as open and as honest as we can be. We want to build a successful culture here. We've hit some bumps. We've got to learn from them. But we need to get better as a club, so our leaders are going to front today, and we'll work with Tex over the next period of time so that he can make a public apology.
Why did it take Tex 2 or 3 weeks to apologise?
That's actually not the case. It was that the investigation lasted 2 to 3 weeks, so it was going through a process. So that was part of the process. It wasn't the apology came out last night or this morning, but that was based on the outcome.
So will Tex be training? Will Tex be training as of this year?
At the minute, he's left the club today. He's gone home. We'll give him some time off.
How long?
We need him to sort of rest and recover, and we need to work with our people. We've talked a lot about Taylor. We need to talk about our people and how they're affected. So we're going to focus on that over the next period of time.
So where is that level of concern, Jim? Obviously there are a number of parties, as you said, Robbie Young, Taylor, to some of your players. Could you just tell us, firstly, I suppose, Taylor's mental health and where the concern is for him, and then on your playing group as well?
Like I said, Taylor's had a big few weeks. It's been emotional for him. He's understanding of the gravity of the situation, and he's gone through a long conciliation process yesterday. So he's in a bit of an emotional wreck. However, there are so many other factors here. There are our 44 listed players. There are 100 staff. There's the North Adelaide players. There's Robbie Young. There's our internal staff. We need to deal with a hell of a lot of people, not just Taylor here. And we'll support Taylor, but support the rest of our club.
You said that Robbie Young, you said that Taylor Weaver was an emotional wreck. How was Robbie Young through his conciliation process?
Having not been through the conciliation process, I can't comment on that. But what I can say is that we've reached out to North Adelaide CEO and offered our support to them and apologised.
You said you talked about the official. Obviously, you can't release details about who this person is that has made the complaint or raised the alarm. But can you talk to us about the courage of that individual?
It's amazing. This individual has just shown amazing courage and strength of character to be able to do this and hold the line, be committed to it, and come to the club and been able to stay strong. So we applaud him, and we think it actually helps us reset our culture, that we can have an individual who'll stand for that, and we support him through.
Is the club doing enough in the Indigenous space?
I think what's happened through the COVID period is that our Indigenous programs were put to a bit of a halt. But I think what's happened in the last couple of weeks and our reset of our culture and where we're trying to go with our strategy for the club in general is that Indigenous programs and getting better in this space and growing this is something that we will deliver on.
Did the COVID cuts and so forth lead to this?
I don't think so. I think that was just a mechanism of some of our programs that weren't delivered. We make a commitment moving forward as we become more financially stable that we'll deliver real, true programs to this community. And I think on the back of what's happened, it will be a key driver, and we'd like Taylor to be involved.
When Eddie Betts was here, he was obviously such a big driver in that Indigenous space from an education point of view and integrating the younger place. Is there a bit of an Indigenous leadership void that hasn't been filled since then?
I'm not sure about that. I think we've got a number of players here that are wonderful people and great citizens. This is disappointing, this aspect, but I think it's not necessarily a leadership void. And if there is, we're looking for support from independent experts like the AFL that can support us through.
How can First Nations people in Australia trust what you're saying? What white men in leadership positions are saying, who front anti-racism campaigns, and then all of a sudden they can kind of turn their back on them? How can they trust what you're saying?
I think to take this on face value, we as a club, we've come out and we apologise for what Taylor has done. We don't stand for that. We condemn racial vilification. That is so far away from our values and beliefs. We need to show that in the community. That's our next challenge. But I'm standing here saying that we don't stand for that and we don't accept it.
Do you consider, drastic? Have you considered at all terminating Tex's contract?
Like I said before, I'm repeating the answer, but what we're doing at the moment is focusing on our people, not necessarily on Taylor. We need to focus on our people first and foremost.
Was you consulted on the penalty at all? Were you consulted on getting a goal for whether 6 games was appropriate? Was Robbie Young consulted on whether
that happened within the conciliation process. However, like I said, we feel it's befitting as a crime.
Is his future in jeopardy? Is his future in jeopardy?
Is his
Future in jeopardy?
Like I said, we're not focusing on Taylor, we're focusing on our people.
Do you want him back next year? Do you want him back in the field next year?
He's contracted for next year. He's been a long-standing player for the club. We'd like him back next year.
What about $1,000 donation that he's giving to Indigenous programs? Is that a charity? Would that be lent to the club somehow? How does that work?
We're going to work with him and his management and identify through our Indigenous Programs Manager what best fits that with Reconciliation SA as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.